and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward.
It is the interview we have waited nearly 40 days for. Vice President Kamala Harris finally taking questions, but alongside running mate Tim Walz. Did Americans, though, get the answers we've been waiting for? We've got the major moments and the Trump team's responses. Both candidates set their sights back on Pennsylvania. But first, we're also following breaking news out of Dallas, Texas, where one police officer is dead. 2 others have been rushed to the hospital after a chase ends in what is being described as a flurry of gunfire. You're watching Fox and Friends First here on this Friday morning. I am Todd Pyro. Carly Shimkus is off today. Dallas police just holding a press conference. Chanley Painter here with everything we just learned. Chanley.
So, Todd, moments ago, Dallas police confirming 3 officers were shot in the line of duty around 10 p.m. last night. They say officers responding to an officer in distress call near Oak Cliff Community Center found a Dallas police officer shot in a marked patrol car. The arriving officers then exchanged gunfire with an armed suspect at the scene, where 2 more officers were shot. As of right now, 1 is in stable condition, 1 is in critical condition, and 1 officer is dead. After the shootout, the suspect fled the scene, leading officers on a high-speed chase. The pursuit ended in Louisville. According to police, when the suspect exited the vehicle, he had a long gun. Officers then fired at the suspect, killing him. Now, the 2 wounded officers were reportedly with life-threatening injuries taken to separate hospitals, while the officer who passed away was taken to Methodist Hospital, where this video shows dozens of officers, including the honor guard, lining the hospital entrance, saluting and paying respects to the fallen officer and what appears to be a family member escorted into the building. Squad cars also lined the blocks leading up to the hospital with emergency lights flashing. In that press briefing, the officer told reporters our department is hurting and asked for prayers this morning as the investigation continues. Todd.
Absolutely. Prayers to the family, prayers to that department. Chanley, keep us posted on any developments throughout this hour. Meantime, now to the election and Kamala Harris's first official interview as the Democrat nominee for president. Doug Luzader live in Washington with more on the vice president's plan for a new way forward. Doug.
Todd, good morning. You know, we've been looking for policy details from the vice president, but this was her painting in still pretty broad strokes in her first sit-down interview since becoming a candidate more than a month ago.
One of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward. Day one, it's going to be about, 1, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard.
But Harris had difficulty explaining some of the abrupt reversals that we've seen in recent weeks on everything from electric vehicle mandates and the border wall to her now former opposition to fracking.
I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed.
Now, for his part, VP nominee Tim Walz was asked about his assertion that he carried a weapon in war. After never having actually been in combat, he blamed that on an error in his grammar.
Said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
As some clips of this interview began to be released through the day yesterday, former President Trump reacted.
It was a tape. We're doing it live. Why are we doing it live and she's doing it taped? But
that's right. He's real.
But she was sitting behind that desk, this massive desk, and she didn't look like a leader to me, I'll be honest. I don't see her negotiating with President Xi of China. I don't see her with Kim Jong-un like we did with Kim Jong-un. So we're going to have to see what happens.
And so much of the focus now turns to Pennsylvania, with Trump heading there today and Harris campaigning there with President Biden in Pittsburgh on Monday. Todd.
But first, Doug, in the next 55 minutes, we're going to break down this interview from every angle. A lot of guests on it. Can't wait to do that. But a great setup from you, Mr. Lizader. We appreciate it. And while Harris says her values have not changed, her campaign says she has evolved from her previous positions on the border and illegal immigration during her time in the Biden White House. These were her thoughts on decriminalizing illegal migrant crossings. Listen. Now, Kamala is saying that, quote, unauthorized border crossings are illegal. Now let's look at her previous stance on ICE detention centers.
When you become president, will you be committing to close the immigration detention centers?
Absolutely, on day one.
On day one, she said, but now her thoughts on ICE detention centers is to, quote, ensure compliance with immigration proceedings and decisions, including removal. Finally, here was her stance on abolishing ICE.
We've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered and the work it is doing, and we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
But now the Harris campaign says she wants, quote, increased funding for border security and enforcement efforts. Do not go anywhere. Joe Concha, Cheryl Casoni, and Brian Bremberg are here to help us close